Well, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode in our family support ministry. My name is Trent Jenkins. I'm one of the campus pastors here at North Coast Church and privileged to be able to host this. And with our guest today, Connor McFadden. He's one of our counselors here at our Vista campus, marriage and family therapist. Incredible man, incredible family, and we're going to be hitting him up for how to be able to help us to be able to have a healthier marriage in the midst of all this pandemic, because we know a healthier marriage will ultimately most likely produce a healthier child. They go hand in hand, and if we don't have healthy marriages, we're going to be fighting an uphill battle to be able to provide an environment that is great for our children. So Connor, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. And man, there's been a lot going on, changing news each and every week. But one thing that just kind of holds steady throughout all of this is if we provide a healthy atmosphere for our kids, we're most likely going to provide a healthier child. And one of those things is marriage, and how we end up setting a tone and atmosphere in our marriage that's going to provide a good, stable foundation for our kids. So how do we end up setting up a better foundation for our marriage?
Well, I think that something to be aware of is just your kids are always watching. In fact, they love to watch and see what mom and dad are doing. And when you're having fun, there's an element of safety that comes into your kids because they're seeing a connection that feels so secure. And so the opposite is true too. When you see mom and dad fighting or not getting along, and not that doesn't happen periodically, but if it's the tone of the house, then kids can start to feel like, ooh, something is not safe. And so they're put a little bit on edge. And so I'm constantly aware and trying to think through what are my kids watching just in how my wife and I interact, how we talk, how we hang out. And sometimes we start laughing, Bree and I start laughing together, and the kids just start cracking up. They don't even know what we're talking about, but they're watching us to see, hey, what do we do too?
Yeah, they see our good moments and they see our bad moments.
Totally.
And ultimately, there's just a lot of mental mess a lot of times in our marriages. There's clutter, mental clutter, if you will.
Yeah.
Unmet expectations, pain from the past, all sorts of different things that really kind of create this negative tone and environment in our homes, and we end up lashing out at each other, and we didn't even really want to or mean to.
Right.
So how do we start to clean up this mental mess in our marriage so that our kids are seeing the best of us and not the worst?
Sure. Yeah, and it is funny, you bring up clutter in a house. I think of every marriage as kind of like a house, and things that you don't deal with, they're like bags right in the middle of your kitchen and your living room, and sometimes you leave a bag there, but if you start leaving 10, 20, 30 bags, that in this house, it starts to feel cluttered. Now, we all love Mary Kondo, the gal who teaches us all how to declutter our life in our house, and I think it just taps into this thing is that we want to have less clutter, we want to have less mess, because it just feels better, but it takes work. And so I think there's kind of three things we could look at that anyone, even today, could start working on that would start eliminating clutter. And that's news, being aware of news, noise, and negativity.
All right, so I need you to be the Mary Kondo of my life, because I have one of those closets that's packed full.
Yeah.
And you're telling me news, noise, and negativity. If I start to eliminate those things, I can create a healthier marriage.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's start with news.
Let's start with news. So news right now, if you haven't noticed, is that there are more people writing than ever before, more opinions than ever before, and less credibility to those opinions. And so it's easy to start tuning into news sources. And really, I think a lot of those things, what they do is they create uncertainty, fear, anxiety, that pretty soon the little time we have or the little energy we have is gobbled up by these fears that we have about what's happening all around us. And so the news is often working against us, is that we're hearing the what ifs or the worst case scenarios that's happening with illness, sickness, politics, disasters, and all of that starts to take our emotional energy and create bags and clutter in our home.
Yeah, I don't know about you at home, but there's enough stress and worry with my job and family. I don't know why I constantly add all this extra stress of the world affairs on my shoulders. So number one, start to pare down, eliminate a lot of the news that we're constantly inundated with?
Sure. In news, just so you know, when we're anxious, we're not thinking about what's best. We're thinking about what if. And what ifs are almost always some sort of negative. And so we turn off this good part of our brain that wants to be creative and think about what's best in a situation or what's helpful, and we start preparing for the worst. But what happens when we're doing that is that we're doing a lot of planning for negative types of interactions, negative things. And so it really does take a toll. You wonder why at the end of the day you're so exhausted, but think about how many times during the day you're anxious by something you read or heard or talked to someone about. And so being aware of those types of things, so at the end of the night, you have some capacity to even connect with someone and just be, but we're not exhausted when that time comes.
So eliminate a lot of the what ifs regarding a lot of times things that are out of our control.
Sure.
All right, so the news. All right, so eliminate news and then noise. So I get noise, but there's a lot of noise I can't eliminate from my life. Like crying kids in my home, I'd love to sometimes eliminate, but I can't eliminate. So what type of noise are you talking about?
So noise for most of us, there is more and more noise in our household, but also in our lives. And the biggest maker of noise is this guy right here. This thing actually vibrates on a desk. And when it vibrates on the desk, I'm instantly leaving this part of my life and looking down at what this is. And this gets my attention. On average, we're looking at these things 96 times a day.
Wow.
So every 10 minutes, we are tempted to tap into some sort of noise. But it also becomes a little bit of an addiction, is that I'm going to this thing to give me a little bit of relief, or even in a peaceful time. You'll notice kids, if they're sitting there, they're bored, what do? They pick up their phone. Let me tap into something. And so we're relying on this to feel okay. When we leave this out, we practice just peace. Just, I could sit here and I could just listen. I could be calm, and I don't need to always trying to find the next source of noise. And any parent will tell you that you've got little noisemakers in your house. So this is not to say that that isn't a factor. That is a factor. I have two boys, 8 and 10 at my home. They hate quiet.
Yeah.
They hate it, and I'm telling them all day, hey, let's be quiet. But there are times I have to go outside. Or there are times that I just tell Bree, hey, I'm going to take a few minutes to do this. And so it is okay. In fact, I want to give all of you parents a pass. You can ask someone for help and say, hey, I would love even to have a neighbor come over, or maybe another parent. We swap kids where all the kids are going to this house for 1 hour, and then on this day that I take all the kids, and I just get an hour to connect with God, or even just to have silence or quiet. And in doing so, I start to think less worst case scenario. And now I go back to that sort of creative part of my brain that starts to think through, hey, what should I be doing? What's important? What's really happening right now? What can I actually impact versus all the things that I'm tapping into that I can impact?
Right. So let me ask you this though, Connor, in terms of noise, if we're checking our phone 96 times a day, or we're kind of in a way choosing to add noise to our lives, what are we trying to avoid? What are we trying to listen to that we're trying to avoid in our lives? It seems like there's a one-for-one swap there.
Yeah, I think we try and avoid things like boredom, but really underneath boredom is anxiety, frustration, that we want to, we have a little bit of a tension where we just feel bad, and so we want to tap into something that is going to give us a little bit of thrill, or it's going to be some sort of information, or it's going to be something that makes me feel different, or maybe in my mind better than I'm feeling right now because I don't feel so good.
Yeah, and there's reality. A lot of times we're probably adding some of that noise to be able to try to escape somewhat of our kids, sometimes our marriage.
Totally.
But you're suggesting going and finding that place of quiet so that we can be refreshed and to be able to come back and engage.
Totally. And at those times, I think even just thinking through, okay, I have kids, and each kid needs a different version of me because they're wired different. My wife needs things from me, and if I'm too noisy, or if I'm tuning into so many things, I actually forget about what's most important in my marriage. And the times I step back, go, okay, tonight, I'm going home in, 3 or 4 hours. My wife's going to be there. What can I do to pour into her cup? Now I'm thinking creatively. Now I'm preparing myself to do that. But if I just do noise, phone all day long, I go home and I try and jump right into the chaos. I'm not ready to respond. I'm just entering into the noise. And then I kind of become a source of noise too.
Yeah. So we're trying to pare down on the news. We're trying to pare down on the noise. Two things that have just filled a lot of our closet of a lot of things that we don't necessarily need in our lives. And then the big one, negativity.
Sure.
Man, it's hard to remove negativity when it seems like there's a lot of negative outlook.
Yeah, absolutely, Trent. And I think that negativity is something that we do have some control over. We have control over the conversations we have, the people we talk to. And if you spend any portion of your day talking to people about politics that you can't change or things that are frustrating, then we're actually building permanent structures in our brain of negativity, and we're getting better at being negative. Mm-hmm. So we're practicing the very thing that hurts us. And the opposite is true, is if we go, all right, I'm being negative, or even I can't hang with this person because they are negative, then I'm going to practice the opposite. I want to be a positive person. I want to pour into people, and I want to tune into people and be around people that pour into me. Then we are also training our brain and shaping our attitude to move in a positive direction.
So you're saying we're shaping our brain towards that negativity, like creating a bent in a way towards.
Yes.
So how does that relate in our communication to our spouse? I mean, I love my wife dearly. So am I really all of a sudden training my brain to respond negatively towards her?
Yeah, if you're practicing something in some version all day long, think of how that changes your responses to people. Think about how I'm thinking of my buddy who's a drill sergeant, and all day long he yells at people. And it's really tempting to want to yell at the kids because it's a practice. And yet I know a guy who does the same job, and he has to practice positivity and really calming himself down. He's able to transition and be that way towards his kids.
I mean, I think there's going to be some people out there, and maybe you're different at home, but it's like this practice of positivity. It feels like I'm making it up, like I'm being fake when this emotionally I feel negative.
Totally.
So how do I do this authentically, in authenticity, to where I'm believing what it is I'm saying?
We do a lot of these things. We do a lot of things that way. I'm thinking of all the times I actually don't want to listen to anyone. And I don't want to go home and listen to anyone. That is authentic, but I do what I know I should do, and the feelings follow because it's really being obedient to God. And so when you're stepping in alignment with holiness, I think the rewards come. And it's kind of that sometimes we fake it till we make it moment of just, I don't feel like doing any of this. I mean, how many times as a parent do you feel like not listening to another story? Or for my kids, I don't want to watch another skate trick or play Legos anymore. But it's just going, hey, I know it's right. I know what is important. And so I'm just going to lead with that and put my feelings aside for this moment. And so in doing so, I find that there's just a much more positive result.
Man, that was awesome. So we're going to try to eliminate 3 things. We're going to try to pare down on the news. We're going to try to eliminate a lot of the noise, and then ultimately the negativity by replacing it with positive thoughts, positive actions. Some great thoughts, Connor. So much. Do you have a final thought for us?
Yeah, can I give you a verse?
Absolutely.
Just at the tail end. It came to mind. I was talking to Tracy Moss about this, and I just love how this speaks directly into what we're talking about. And this is Paul speaking to the church of Philippi in Philippians 4:8, and it says, finally, I love it's kind of a conclusion. It says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And so I love this list in that we could easily, just even right now, write this list down and go, hey, this is what the rest of today is going to look like. I'm going to spend even just 15 minutes thinking about this list for this week and see how that changes my attitude, my perspective, and even the emotional availability that I have towards my spouse and works on decluttering that stress that I have, so I'm free to be a different type of partner in my marriage.
That's awesome. Listen, it's not Connor's thoughts, it's good Bible. All right? Let's go out and do it. We'll see you next time.